Hi, welcome back to yet another video. If you watched the last video, you're a rock star. If you're watching this video, same. Also, shout out to the Spotify people. I see you. So today, I have a very special guest, as you may have noticed. This gentleman right here, Jonas Ocean Groves, my friend, my roommate, my brother, and today we decided to have one of the chats that we normally have on our couch, on Nadia's couch instead, in front of the camera. Today we're going to talk about reclaiming places and activities that trauma has distorted for us. You may ask what that means. Let me explain. Have you ever gone to a place where in the past you've shared that experience with someone else, and when you go back to it, you feel a little bit anxious about even running into that person, or it brings up memories that are not so pleasant, or it brings up good memories from someone that you're not as close with anymore? Or is there a song that you've listened to or an album? I know for me, a lot of people have tried to ruin music for me, but I am resilient and will not allow them to ruin music for me because I love music so much. That's kind of what I'm talking about when I'm saying reclaiming different experiences and different places. Would you say that you have any kind of experience with that, Mr. Jonas Ocean Groves?
I think oftentimes I have really strong connections with the places I used to live and then the surrounding areas and music as well. And I don't like that because there's music that I love so much and then it gets tainted and distorted, and then, it's like you still want to listen to it, but you kind of have to like dive back in. Short answer, yes.
What would you say are like some examples of of places or activity? Like, can you give examples?
I think the most relevant example for me right now would be where I live. So we live in North Park in San Diego. And for a long time, I had this association with it being a place where I spent a lot of time there when I was in a phase of not really knowing who I was, being engaged in a lot of like self-sabotaging behaviors, bad relationships, and just trying to like prove myself, I guess. So for me, North Park felt like those things. It felt really heavy. It like brought on this feeling of imposter syndrome as well. It felt like that every time I would go too. So it turned into this thing of me actually avoiding going there at all. And it wasn't like I consciously knew that that was what I was feeling. I just knew that when I went there, I felt it felt bad. That feeling would just kind of linger and grow and become a lot bigger and more ambiguous and hard to decipher. And so eventually I had to like sit with it a little bit more.
Yeah, I feel like for me, Northern California held so much of my trauma. And when I had to move back there in 2020, I had to face things that I thought I had overcome. But what I didn't realize is I just left it behind and it was kind of waiting for me. I think that sometimes we feel like when we distance ourselves from something, now we don't need to deal with it anymore. But I got forced to deal with it. And so going back to Northern California, where I grew up, I had to face the same issues that I had faced previously, but I thought I had overcome. There's a lot of like fear and anxiety that would come up being in that place and going to that place, seeing those people, the bridges that I had burned, all these different things. But I had to come to a place of recognizing that that was what was going on. Everyone else wasn't the problem, but the way that I was viewing things was the problem more so than anything else. And this was something that I needed to step up and recognize that I needed to reclaim for myself so that I could have a fuller existence of life, because I shouldn't have to feel like I can't be in my hometown because I have all these people I'm avoiding and all this trauma and all this other stuff. For me, that's kind of an indicator of when I need to deal with the trauma and need to go in and reclaim that place or that thing. I think it's important to reclaim things for yourself. Before I go in to try to reclaim things, I take an evaluation and I'm like, is this something that I actually need to do? Because not every single thing needs to be reclaimed. Some things you can just let go and you can move on. But in that, I have to be honest with myself and be real and really look in front of the mirror and say, this is something that is bringing up all these feelings, and these feelings need to be addressed. And it's not for that those other people or for anything else, but it's for myself. And I think that we do such a disservice to ourselves when we're not honest in the process of recognizing when reclamation needs to happen when it comes to places and things. Music, when that song that you heard that you used to play with that one person triggers you every time and brings you to this emotional place, that for me is an indicator I need to probably work through some stuff. The song is not the problem. The way that I am relating to that song is the problem. That other person is not the problem. The way I'm relating it with them is the problem. And I need to recognize that and be honest with myself in order to kind of go in that process. What are some indicators for you, dude?
I think similarly to you, probably it's similar for most people in that it's like just a level of discomfort. It doesn't end there though. It's kind of like the initial tinge of like, okay, I'm in this area. I feel uncomfortable. Why? Why do I feel this way? And then digging into that because like Landon was saying, like sometimes you don't need to, there's nothing to resolve. A place that just isn't a great place, you don't have to make it become a great place, if that makes sense. But if it's a place that is more like neutral ground in the situation and really it's just like emotionally charged for you, I feel like that is when I start to wonder about it and I start to ask myself why it's that way. And I think it's just like a series of asking myself why, because I always like to know the why behind the what. So if I'm feeling this sort of like weird, nebulous emotion that is hard to describe in words, which I think is more common than people maybe say. And this would even, sometimes it would be like the time of day. There was years where this like specific time of day had this really negative, depressing emotion attached to it, and I honestly didn't know why that was. Places, music, whatever. The common thing here is that to pursue healing, it was paying attention to the initial discomfort that it was causing, and instead of avoiding it, because that's the thing, like you can go into avoidance or you can go into asking questions, and then I think that like the asking questions can lead to healing, but when you avoid it, it just nothing changes. And when I was avoiding North Park, since I was using that example, it was that way, like nothing changed. And so I would go back and it'd be like, oh, these places feel the same as they did the last time I was here. Who would have thought that would be the case? But now living there for almost a year with Landon, we've both been able to reclaim it, and it's been like still that process of like following up the whys with like a call to action maybe too. This park or this place has a negative connotation, so I'm going to create a new story for myself with that place. I'm going to create new experiences there, and then it can go into all kinds of other things as well.
I remember when Jonas and I first moved into North Park, he was like very hesitant. When we were looking for an apartment, he's like, anywhere but North Park. And I was
like, I'd love to live in this really crappy area for sure. That sounds amazing. Just not North Park, the place that makes the most sense.
Yeah, and I got to see his process, and that's kind of what drove me in my own process, because he would just go on walks. We would walk together. He would go back to those coffee shops that had those feelings, and I found so many times where Jonas is like, I love living here. This is amazing. This is great. And then we run into people from different contexts, and they've been recontextualized now, getting back into the art scene and different stuff like that. But in order for him to get to that place, he had to go through it. He had to make a conscious decision to do that. What do you feel like are some of the first baby steps, or first couple steps in that process of starting to go through the reclamation when it comes to this trauma and different stuff like that?
I think that one of the things that I always remember when I start to go through an uncomfortable process is to first become okay with the fact that it's uncomfortable. Because when you can accept that something is gonna be hard, then it just gets a lot easier, I think. Just by sort of like surrendering it feels this way, or it brings up this thing. It's like, yeah, that's what the process is. So if you can just surrender yourself to what that process is going to look like, then everything gets a lot easier and it can actually even be enjoyable. Even though it feels like, oh, that hurts, or you don't really have words for the emotion still, and you don't really know the why yet. Just knowing that, like, I'm committed to this process and to like going on the walks or going to the coffee shops or going to these places and recontextualizing them for myself. I didn't know what it would look like, if I would feel differently that day. And so it was, the goal wasn't like change it right then and there as much as it was to just be present in the process instead of avoiding. The most basic thing is give it your presence. Because when you decide to be present to something, then you can see it for what it is, you know, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and then you can decide how you want to go from there. But you can't do anything if you're not going to be present to it, if you're just going to avoid it, if you're going to save it for another day, you know, if you're going to save that conversation with that person for another day, if you're going to delete that song from your library, if you're going to like never watch that movie again, you know, whatever it is. Because there's been so many times where it has been recontextualized and it really wasn't my own efforts. It was more of like truly just this surrendering that led to those things and choosing to commit to it regardless of how it might feel, and also knowing like it doesn't need to happen within a certain time frame. And if you can accept that it's going to take the time that it takes too, then that also makes it enjoyable rather than like a demand or something. Because if you don't understand something about yourself, you can't really demand yourself to understand that thing. You just have to start learning and start realizing, and then that can take whatever experiences or time that it takes.
I feel like something that you said was really good was like being present. And I feel like you can't ask the why questions if you're not being present. If you're just continuously going through life and just feeling these things, that pause in that moment, allowing yourself to feel what you need to feel in order to begin to ask, why am I feeling this way? I think that that's so key in what you said. I also feel like talking to people about how you're feeling is also really good in bringing people that are in that healthy ecosystem and in your friend group. I think that that is huge because, like I said previously in another video, we have all these intrusive thoughts. And sometimes when we say the intrusive thoughts out loud, we realize how wild they are. Yeah. And this person can really help key in on what we're not able to put our finger on. We're having so much trouble identifying the thing, and this person who has an outside perspective, who loves you and cares about you, is like, oh, well, this is that. And then you're like, boom, mind blown. I never thought of it that way. But I think bringing people into that is so key in helping with those baby steps of like coming to the other side and having full reclamation of different things in different places. It's sort of like a very dumbed down version of exposure therapy, putting yourself back in that context in order to recontextualize it. It feels like that would not be the way to do that. And you can, do it from a distance. But I think the only way to have healing in these situations is to go back to the situation. Like if you're hurt in relationship, the only way to be healed is through relationship. And so when it comes to trauma with different places and different things, the only way out to the other side is through. And for me, I like to revisit those places on my own before I bring in someone else to help me recontextualize it, because I know my comfortability level, and maybe I just get out of the car, walk around a block, and then I'm done. But I did what I felt like I needed to do to reclaim this place for that day, and I'm okay with that. I think that what Jonas said about not putting yourself on a timeline is huge. We're so hard on ourselves. We are our biggest critic. And it's so important to be kind to yourself. Be kind to yourself. Don't have this checklist. Don't have this timeline in your mind. Do what you feel you're comfortable with, but be active in that. Also, something that I saw this week that made me think too, that I thought was really good, is that we are human beings, not human doings. We are not made to just continually gather information and grow and heal and do all these different things. we have to be sometimes. But in order for me to be and have such a high quality of being, sometimes I have to be uncomfortable and walk through that healing. But I think that it can almost be like this adrenaline junkie syndrome where it's like, okay, my new identity is I'm just going to go get healing all the time. I'm going to be the person that grows. I'm going to have the best thing to say in this conversation all the time. And I don't think that that is a healthy way to grow. I think that it's important to know yourself, know how you feel, do what you feel you need to do accordingly, rather than doing it for other people. Because I feel like when your identity becomes to grow and to do all these different things, you're no longer doing it for yourself. You're doing it for other people to be like, whoa, you've grown so much, you know so much, you're doing all these things. But I have to do it for me so that I can be, so that I can go back to that place, recontextualize it, and be. I'm not there to do something, but because I don't want to have all these places on the map of San Diego where I can't go because they make me feel away. I don't want to have all these artists or albums that I love that I can't listen to because they make me feel away, because that's for me. It's not for someone else to come in and point out and recognize how much I've grown. It's for me. Grow for yourself. Be for yourself. We dove into a bit of the opening steps. With the opening steps and with walking through that process of being uncomfortable and all these different things, what are some benchmarks for you or signs for you that the reclamation is beginning to take or it's beginning to work?
I think a lot of the process is about displacing fear. And so when you go into a place that used to cause all of those negative emotions, fear being one of them, and fear is no longer the prominent emotion, it may still be present in some sense, or there might be anxiety in some way, because you're never going to finish growing, you're never going to finish attaining more levels of freedom. You're always in that process of becoming, and you can't see growth as like a finish line, because it's not a finish line, it's a process that you commit to. So I think for me, like, when really take in those moments progress, I guess, and I take inventory of the progress, it's noticing all of the ways that fear has been displaced and then joy has now taken its place instead. So like when I go on walks around North Park now, it doesn't feel like how it did before. I love living there, like Landon said. Like, I love living there. I love going on walks there. I love going on runs every morning there. I love seeing the the neighbors and the dogs that walk around every day, and like there's like familiarities now because I was never there before, or I was only there for certain things. I wasn't able to form familiarities that were positive. It was more just like really emotionally charged moments or experiences that like characterized this whole place. But now it's more nuanced, I guess. There's more experiences, so there's like, oh, I like walking down this street. I like the houses over there. I like this coffee shop. I like running into this person or these people, because it's like this process isn't just about reclaiming a place. It's also about like reclaiming some internal agency, having power over your emotions, in that you know how to regulate them, you know how to feel them, like their time and place, and you're sort of telling them their function instead of them telling you how you're going to live your entire life. So I feel like just from engaging in the process of reclamation, you begin to change a lot as a person. It's funny because it kind of happens right under your nose, I feel like, sometimes. Yeah. And that's what Landon was saying about like bringing other people into the process. I think that's when you get to sometimes notice things that you wouldn't have because other people have noticed them, and they get to point those out. But they wouldn't be able to do that had you not brought them into the process, had they not seen you at the beginning, in the middle, in the end. Opening yourself up in that way to other people allows for you to see your progress in a more like holistic way. I think for me, it's when joy begins to really displace fear.
Yeah, I definitely agree with what you said. When I noticed that the emotions that I had felt previously are very low or completely gone, that's when I'm starting to recognize healing for myself. Because before I would feel dread going to this place, I would feel anxious, I would feel fear. Maybe there is a tinge of that, but it's not as severe as it was before. And so I'm recognizing growth. And like you said, having people in that process to point out those small milestones for you. Because, like I said before, we are so hard on ourselves. So it's really good to bring good people in so that they can point out the gold in us. People that care about you with your highs and with your lows and that want to see you succeed at the end of the day. But even in the context of like a relationship where there was a falling out or something like that, when I start to think about this person and the emotions aren't attached anymore, I know that I've let it go and I've released that. And I feel like for me with places and music, the longer that I have that exposure therapy, so to speak, and I'm present with myself and feel what I need to feel and go through, I start to feel differently towards that. And then I can bring someone else into that in order to recontextualize it. So now when I hear this song, it makes me think of a good time that me and Jonas had. Or when we walk down the street, like Jonas said, it makes me think of the joke that Jonas said that was not funny, but I laughed because I felt bad. Just kidding. Jonas is a funny guy. All that being said, I feel like those are some pretty good tools to add to the tool belt in order to begin to recognize when there is reclamation needed. Speaking of, sort of, Jonas here has started a brand called Maybe You Just Need Some Water. The brand is kind of same, simpatico with these videos and what I'm doing about asking good questions and diving a little bit deeper, getting in touch with yourself, getting in touch with your inner child, and bringing yourself back to created intent prior to having different things happen and trauma happen and having that childlike experience once again. Would you like to dive a little bit into maybe you just need some water for the people who don't know and for the people who do know so they can go and tell their friends and explain it a little bit more?
It's really not simple in the objective what this brand is, but to try and put it simply, it's about creating projects, artworks, apparel, objects, whatever that works to tell stories of healing and transformation, either that I've experienced or that other people have experienced. And it's always on that theme of like using the metaphor of there being an internal root system within all of us, and some of the roots are unhealthy, and it's staggering the growth from coming out and producing good fruit. So it's like, what does it look like when you allow healing to take place in those unhealthy roots, and then observing the process, and then also observing what kind of fruit comes out of that? Because I think that human beings are ingrained with seeds of potential. I think people can tend to look similar, like we have ways that we internally group people, or like they're this genre of person, or they're this way, or whatever. And I think that people want community and they want to be part of like a tribe or something that's bigger than them. And so oftentimes we kind of like put ourselves in those places by cutting off parts of ourselves that would take us out of it, if that makes sense. But I think that people are incredibly different from each other. And I think that at our most healthy, we have the most to give. And at our most healthy, we can be seen like at the deepest level. And so the fruit that we produce in our lives, what I mean by fruit is that when I go through this process of displacing fear and go to these places or listen to music or whatever it is, and I allow joy to take its place instead, and I go through the process, whatever it looks like, the fruit that comes out of that is me beginning to see North Park as beautiful, me beginning to engage with it differently and have different interactions with people. With the brand, for example, I've started to put like guerrilla marketing ads around the town. People can just like take off of it what they want. There's different like qualities on there, like love and peace, and it just says grab what you want. The point is, I wouldn't be doing that if I hadn't already reclaimed that place for myself and gone through the process of getting to that point. And so the brand is really about like sharing the process. It's about me sharing my process with everyone else, but it's also an invitation to everyone else to engage with it as much as they want to. You know, there's like this video mail segment that I started where the questions that I pose every other week, somebody sends a video response, and so it kind of engages with the community that way. And the goal is to normalize growth and healing and the process of that, and sort of like encourage and empower people to begin the process of doing that. And yeah, it's been really amazing and very challenging in very good ways. And I love it a lot.
I think that one of my favorite things about Jonas entering in this process of maybe you just need some water is he's modeling what is available for people. It's this interactive thing. It's not just, hey, look at me and how much I've grown, like we were talking about before. It's, hey, this is what I've done, this is my experience, and this is what is available. And that's what I'm hoping to communicate as well. I feel like together we're going to change the entire planet. I do feel that way, my friend. I also am extremely proud of you because I know it's not always easy, but you stick to your guns, and I think that that's really admirable, and I'm proud to be a part of your process, to live with you, to call you my brother. I love you very much, and I'm excited to see what new things are coming and what's already been unfolding, what's been in the roots that's coming up to the soil, like moving forward. It's really cool. All of the information for Jonas's brand and social media is going to be in the description, so please make sure to check that out. He has really cool shirts and prints that are awesome as well, that I get to see in my home every day because I live with the man who made them, and actually behind the camera right now, but you can't see that. If you made it to the end of the video, thank you. You get 6 gold stars. We are told to tell you to like and subscribe. We would also really enjoy if you would comment what are some things that you're looking to reclaim, or things that you have reclaimed. What does the process look like for you? I really want to hear from you. I really want to build a community where we're building each other up. I don't want it to just be me talking into a microphone, Jonas talking into whoever's talking into a microphone. I really want to build a community where we can all build each other up, because I think that for so long there's been a lot of communities where this competition comes in and people tear each other apart. And I just really want to see us all want to see each other succeed. Because I want you to succeed. I want this guy to succeed. I want me to succeed. We can all succeed together. There's room for all of us at the table. Thank you again for watching. We appreciate you. And we're going to give you a kiss goodbye. Beautiful.
I didn't make a noise.
My noise is loud. My noise is loud enough.